The first night the house spoke back, it did so quietly, like a courtesy. I had knocked my knuckle against the doorframe while carrying in a box, and the old wood answered with a small, patient creak, the sound you make when you want someone to know you are there without startling them. I froze, box in my arms, listening. The house settled, exhaled dust, and was silent again. I told myself it was the weather, the tired board stretching after a long day. I had moved into a tired place, it was reasonable that it would sigh. The house sat at the end of a street that had learned to bow its head. Most of the neighbors had grown old at the same time as their homes, and when they moved on, their places were left to wait. This one waited with its windows half-lidded, its porch sagging like a mouth missing teeth. The realtor called it, full of character. My sister, who helped me unload, called it, a project. I called it mine because I needed it to be. I had come there with the quiet hope that if I took care of something, something might take care of me in return. That's not a bargain you can speak aloud. It's something you learn by not being surprised when kindness has an echo. On the first morning, I found the faucet in the kitchen dripping. The sink was chipped enamel, the faucet tarnished, the drip steady as a metronome. I could have ignored it. I had ignored worse. Instead, I knelt on the cool tile, found the shutoff, and replaced a washer I didn't know I had the patience to replace. When the drip stopped, the pipes gave a little knock, like a knuckle on wood again. I laughed out loud. "You're welcome," I told the sink, embarrassed by myself. The house smelled like old books and rain. In the afternoons, light slid across the floorboards and found nails like constellations. I swept and swept, lifting decades of grit, and the broom bristles whispered secrets I pretended not to hear. I discovered a loose stair that groaned if you stepped too far left. That's not a bargain you can speak aloud. It's something you learn by not being surprised when kindness has an echo. On the first morning, I found the faucet in the kitchen dripping. The sink was chipped enamel, the faucet tarnished, the drip steady as a metronome. I could have ignored it. I had ignored worse. Instead, I knelt on the cool tile, found the shutoff, and replaced a washer I didn't know I had the patience to replace. When the drip stopped, the pipes gave a little knock, like a knuckle on wood again. I laughed out loud. "You're welcome," I told the sink, embarrassed by myself. The house smelled like old books and rain. In the afternoons, light slid across the floorboards and found nails like constellations. I swept and swept, lifting decades of grit, and the broom bristles whispered secrets I pretended not to hear. I discovered a loose stair that groaned if you stepped too far left. I learned where the roof leaked and where the wind liked to hide. I learned the house's habits, and the house learned mine. I didn't have much furniture. A mattress on the floor. A table I had found by the curb, scarred but sturdy. A chair whose back bowed in a way that fit me. On the third night, I woke to the sound of something moving in the walls. Mice, I thought. Or memory. I lay there, counting breaths. Then the sound came again, not scurrying but slow, a sliding like a book being shelved. The house was rearranging itself, I decided, and turned over and slept. It was easier to believe in a listening house than it was to believe in people. People had been the reason I came there alone, the reason my voice was careful even with myself. I had left a place where doors slammed and words were thrown like dishes. I had learned to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't wander into rooms it shouldn't. On the fourth day, I found a note tucked into the mailbox. The paper was thin, the handwriting precise. "If you're the new owner, welcome. The oak in the back drops limbs when it storms. Call me if you need help. Mrs. Alvarez, 402." I walked down the street with the note in my pocket. Mrs. Alvarez answered her door with a smile that had practiced patience. She had silver hair pinned in a way that did not move when she nodded. Her house smelled like bread. We stood in her kitchen while she cut slices and asked questions that were not really questions. She told me about the block, about the man who used to live in my house, about how he had been kind in small, almost invisible ways. He fixed a latch on her gate once. He watched her dog when she was sick. He planted bulbs along the fence line. He died quietly, she said, and the house waited. When I returned, the house felt warmer, though the thermostat had not changed. I found a box in the hall I hadn't noticed before. Inside were nails sorted by size, a coil of twine, a handful of screws in a jar. I assumed I had overlooked it. I did not assume the house had brought it to me, but I did thank the air as if it had. That week, the storms came. The oak in the backyard moaned and dropped a branch that dented the ground like a knuckle. I dragged it to the curb, my hands blistering. When I finished, the back door opened without sticking for the first time. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass and breathed. At night, the house made itself known. Not in words, not in sounds I could translate. In the way the floorboards softened under my feet when I carried laundry. In the way the light bulb in the hall flickered, then steadied, when I stood there too long with my thoughts. In the way the front door closed more gently when I was sad. I began to do things for the house that were not strictly necessary. I oiled the hinges. I painted the porch rail a color like warm bread. I put my hand flat against the wall and said thank you when I left in the mornings. I was careful not to tell anyone these things. It felt like a private language. The kindness I practiced inside spilled outward without asking. When Mrs. Alvarez's gate sagged, I fixed it the way the man before me had. When a package sat on the wrong porch, I carried it home. When the kid 2 houses down tried to learn guitar, I listened through my open window and clapped when he finished. The house noticed. When I forgot to pay the electric bill and the lights flickered, the neighbor knocked with a reminder and a smile. When I lay awake counting breaths, the house creaked in a rhythm I could follow back to sleep. Word got around that I was handy. People asked for help. I said yes more than I said no. I learned to set boundaries without building walls. The house approved, or so it felt, by making space where I needed it. A closet door that had always stuck began to glide. A shelf bowed less under weight. In the summer, I planted bulbs along the fence line the way Mrs. Alvarez said the man had. My hands in the dirt, I felt something like a pulse. When the first green tips appeared, the house seemed to lean toward the yard, as if to see. The day the child knocked on my door, the house had already told me someone was coming. The floorboards shifted, a warning and a welcome. The child stood there with a scraped knee and a bravery that looked like defiance. I cleaned the cut, offered a cookie, called a mother whose voice broke when she answered. After they left, the house settled into a quiet that felt like pride. I began to understand that memory was not about keeping everything. It was about keeping the right things, the ones that could teach. The house remembered what I did not because it judged me but because it needed to know how to hold me. It remembered that I fixed instead of broke, that I stayed when it would have been easier to go, that I spoke softly when I could have shouted. On the anniversary of my move, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The street had lifted its head a little. A new family moved into the blue house. Someone painted a door red. Mrs. Alvarez waved. The oak dropped a leaf into my cup. I laughed and fished it out. I see you, I told the house. I didn't know if it saw me. I only knew that I felt seen, and that was enough. That night, I dreamed of rooms I had not yet entered. In the dream, the house showed me a small door behind the stairs. Inside was a space just big enough to stand and breathe. The walls were lined with hooks holding kindnesses like coats, a gate fixed, a knee cleaned, a washer replaced. There was room for more. When I woke, the house was quiet. It did not need to speak. It had remembered, and because it remembered, it could forget what hurt and keep what healed. I rose and went about my day, carrying that knowledge with me like a key.